Let's bring in Dan Perry, author of the newsletter Ask Questions Later, and has spent close to a decade covering the Israel-Palestinian conflict for the Associated Press. Dan, good morning to you. Do you think the truce will be extended?
Probably so. Both sides have an interest. Israel wants to get back the hostages, and Hamas wants to gain time to regroup, to rearm, and really to wait for the world to notice how much destruction has happened in Gaza, and from their perspective, to pressure Israel not to resume the fighting. And if that happens, and if the fighting somehow peters out and Hamas remains in power, whether in southern Gaza only, or who knows, maybe even somewhat in northern Gaza, then that for them is a very big victory. And that has impact all over the region, because it will be perceived in countries like Egypt and Saudi Arabia and in the Gulf and in Iraq as a victory for pro-Iranian jihadi forces. There is a lot more at stake here than just individuals involved.
But as you're mentioning petering out, the fight petering out, obviously everybody wants the hostages freed. But with every passing day, I mean, there is going to be that emboldening, that strengthening of Hamas's forces. But Netanyahu saying it doesn't matter, we're going to get all of our hostages freed and we are going to destroy Hamas. How much confidence do Israelis have in this leader's words?
In Israel, in
Netanyahu's words, yes.
Netanyahu is rather a spent brand in Israel for a whole lot of reasons. So there's not a lot of confidence in Netanyahu, who polls show would lose an election held today quite badly, and with 80% of the people demanding his resignation. He's trying to hang on. His interest clearly is in a prolonged operation in Gaza, whether it's actively military or some kind of an occupation, so that he can claim that you shouldn't change leaders during wartime. And he's hoping eventually there will be a perception of victory, and the memories of the cataclysmic failure, which it was on October 7th, will somehow dissipate. Look, Hamas can probably buy maybe up to another month of quiet based on the current equation of 10 hostages per day, roughly. Of course, they can change that equation, because after they return the hostages they really want to return, which is, you know, the babies and the little girls, and they know they look bad for holding those hostages. When they're left only with men of military age, some of whom are maybe actually reserve soldiers, some of whom might have been conscripted soldiers on the day that they were taken, they can up the price. They can start demanding genuine murderers, people who are convicted of murders of dozens and hundreds of people in Israeli jails. That will be excruciating for the government. For Israel, it will exact more of a political price on Netanyahu himself. They can buy a bunch of time. Once they've bought that time, the question becomes in mid-December, at the end of December, in the holiday season in the States, when maybe the memories of the massacre have begun to fade somewhat, incredible as that may seem, can Israel really, really start again? You know, they have the option of saying, look, we control northern Gaza, which they kind of do right now. Gaza City was the capital of Hamas-led Gaza. They can, declare victory and sort of call it a day. I think they have that option, and the rest is really politics and perception.
I don't know that, I mean, this seems though like, and you live there, this doesn't seem like the same situation where they would take that kind of concession, at least this particular Israeli government. I know they released over 100 Palestinian prisoners. I don't have the exact count right now, but this was all part of the ceasefire deal in exchange for those hostages. You see these disparate images of the Israeli hostages being released, and then you see those prisoners released to jubilant cheers in Gaza. How much of a risk are those prisoners today, having been released?
There is a history in Israel of releasing prisoners who turn out to be mastermind terrorists, like Yahya Sinwar, the current leader in Gaza, who was released in 2011 as part of a deal where Israel gave up over 1,000 convicted, prisoners who were convicted, some of whom were genuinely terrorists by any definition, which includes Sinwar. Now, that's 1,000 for one. That's not the current equation. Now they're getting 10 for one. But look, up until now, they've gotten fairly minor league terrorists, let's say.